Hey, movers and shapers, thank you for joining me on my free Melt Your Middle, Break the Cycles workshop. Over the next 3 days, I'm going to be doing 3 quick little sessions on some connections, some hormone connections in our bodies that force fat storage around the middle. I'll get into the details of the sessions. I don't want to blow it all in the introduction. Today, specifically, we're going to be talking about the leptin-ghrelin cycle or connection and the blood sugar insulin connection and kind of how they all go together. At the end of the 3 days, we'll summarize everything because all these little cycles are part of a bigger cycle. And understanding it is the first step in breaking them, and taking some action is the next step. And I'm going to give you some takeaways at the end of it. So bear with me because right now I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint because sometimes visuals are good. And I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you at once. And so I don't forget anything. I have lots of notes. I'm going to be looking down, looking at my references just to make sure that, I've taught this so many times and I get it in my brain, but then when I want to get it out of my mouth, I need help. So hence the notes. All right, let's pull up my little PowerPoint here. Okay. Oh, you know what I have to do? Hold on. First, I have to do share screen. Share. Don't want that. We want that. Slideshow from beginning. All right. There we are. Melt your middle. Break the cycles. Day 1. The Ghrelin and Leptin cycle and the blood sugar insulin cycle. And we're going to talk about how these affect us. So first, we're going to talk about Ghrelin and Leptin. I'm going to go over this and then I'm going to refer to my notes to make sure I haven't missed anything, or I'll do my notes while we're going over this. All right, so leptin over here on the right is an appetite suppressor. As it says here, I'm not going to just read slides, but some of what I'm saying is going to be on here. And it says it right here. It's stored in fat and it's secreted by fat. And I'm going to talk about leptin first because then I'll tell you how it works with the ghrelin. The leptin is what tells us to stop eating. It tells us when we're satisfied and when to stop eating. But if we have too much leptin stored in our fat cells, and when it's released, the brain does not register that we need to stop eating, that we're full. All right, there's too much of it in the system. This is called leptin insensitivity, and we want to be leptin sensitive. How do we do that? By reducing fat. Now, how does this work with the ghrelin? So ghrelin comes from the stomach and tells us when we're hungry. And that's when, and that we need to be nourished. Let me tell you something. Just being hungry, okay, I'm going to use an example. When my kids would come home from school, they would have low blood sugars and the ghrelin would be saying, you're hungry, you haven't eaten since lunch, you need a snack. So they'd want to eat. Now because their blood sugars were low, they wanted something that would spike their blood sugars or raise their blood sugar. So they always wanted carbs, crackers or cookies or sugar or whatever. I always had them eat a piece of fruit or some vegetables first before the carb, so they wouldn't elevate their blood sugars and then crash again a minute later, but also to nourish their body. Because if they just had those crackers 5 minutes later, they'd be coming back and saying they were still hungry. It didn't nourish the body and it didn't give the leptin an opportunity to say, you're satisfied. In this little visual, it says it sends a signal to your brain to let you know you're full and to stop eating. I'd like to change that a little bit and say, and let you know that it tells your brain when you are satisfied, when you are nourished. This is where the term satiety comes from. Satiated, satisfied. Okay, so then as it says on here, it says age, gender, blood glucose or blood sugars, and leptin levels can all affect ghrelin levels. So when you have leptin that tells your body you are satisfied, then your ghrelin levels go down and then you don't need the leptin. But when these are working in a cycle, you're always hungry. and you're never satisfied. So what is the key? We need to get rid of the leptin or reduce leptin and increase leptin sensitivity to the brain. In addition to losing fat to help yourself to decrease the leptin levels, is you need to sleep more. When you don't get enough sleep, your leptin levels rise and you are not leptin sensitive. You are leptin insensitive. You need to reduce stress. And you're gonna hear some commonalities in these 3 sessions from today, tomorrow, and the next day. And you need to provide higher nutrient level to the body. These are all things that will lower leptin and increase leptin sensitivity. All right. All right, that's good. That's all from those notes. Let me look at these notes. Your Ghrelin levels are going to be remain high until you've had the food. I've already said that. When you have leptin resistance, that's when your leptin receptors don't know that there's leptin flowing through, and it doesn't tell you that you're satisfied, and you're going to keep eating. And this is when you overeat. I'm not going to get into the stress hormones yet. So that's pretty good about the leptin. Let me see if there's anything on my other notes. Oh, here, no, that's back to the other one. Okay, the 4 things that I already said that too. 4 things that cause leptin resistance: poor eating, lack of sleep, chronic stress, and nutrient deficiency. All right, I guess I didn't need my notes for this. So that's the leptin ghrelin. Ghrelin tells you you're hungry. Leptin is supposed to be released, tell you when you've had enough food. Ghrelin goes away, you're not hungry anymore. Unfortunately, we overeat because our leptin doesn't tell us when we're full, because our receptors are insensitive and we have leptin resistance. So we continue eating until we overeat. It increases fat on our body, which just increases more leptin. And now we have a vicious cycle. That's the leptin ghrelin vicious cycle that we need to break. And we break it by reducing fat, feeding our bodies, reducing stress, and sleeping more. I'll recap that again. But now there's another cycle we're talking about, and that's the blood sugar insulin cycle. So ghrelin, leptin, and insulin are the 3 hormones we're talking about today. Ghrelin is released from the stomach, leptin is released from the fat, and insulin is released from your pancreas. And you get an insulin response anytime you spike your blood sugars. So the key is regulate those blood sugars. Now, if you look at this visual, levels 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7 are regulated blood sugars. They're just stable. When you have stable blood sugars, you are in fat burning mode. And what did we just say? We need to reduce fat. So we're more leptin sensitive. So we are not leptin resistant. Okay. So why do we store fat? Or how, okay, how do we regulate these blood sugars? We do it by eliminating the spikes, number 4, and the crashes, number 5. There's a couple ways to do that. We can do it naturally by recognizing when we have low blood sugars, because here's what happens. When we have low blood sugars down in the 5, we're tired and we're hungry, and our bodies will tell us to eat anything. We won't even think about it. We will just grab something that will raise our blood sugars. Usually it's candy or sweets or carbs, or like my kids when they came home from school, crackers. What we should be eating when we're tired and low of energy, and we know we have low blood sugars, maybe we can't focus and we're craving something sugary, something sweet, something carby, is we should be reaching for either vegetables, fresh fruits, nuts, proteins, or good carbs like sweet potatoes, beans, hummus. Great snack is hummus with veggies, because those will not spike our blood sugars. Why do we want to eliminate that spike? Well, we want to stay on fat burning. We want to keep our blood sugars regulated. But when we spike, when we do eat the carbs or the sugars or the sweets, we have an insulin response. Our pancreas releases insulin to eat up those sugars and actually takes it to the muscles for energy. I'm not going to get into that right now, but that throws you into fat storage. The minute there's an insulin response, you're in fat storage. Eats up those blood sugars, you get a crash. You eat something sugary, you're in fat storage. Most of us who struggle with fat around the middle, are giving into these spikes and crashes, spikes and crashes, spikes and crashes. When we get a crash, we eat sugar, we get a blood sugar spike, insulin's released, we're in fat storage. Crash, fat storage, low energy, eat something, spike, insulin, fat storage. And this is where the leptin's living. So we need to regulate blood sugars so we are not storing fat, so we can actually burn fat. Because here's what happens when you stop the spikes and the crashes, not only are you not storing fat, but when you regulate your blood sugars, you go into fat burning. So you get a double whammy here. You've got two reasons to stop this cycle of blood sugar crash, zap, hungry, eat something bad, spike, insulin response, fat burning. And how do you do it? With low glycemic index eating or low glycemic impact eating. Foods have a ranking, a glycemic index ranking on how they affect your blood sugars. There's low, medium, and high. We want to avoid high glycemic foods. High glycemic foods spike your blood sugars. You leave that fat burning zone, they crash. You have an insulin response, then they crash, and now you're in fat burning again. So and depending on what your inch loss goals are, I don't focus on weight loss because weight is a deceptive measurement. Fat weighs half of what muscle does. So you could gain muscle and lose fat and nothing's going to reflect on the scale. So that scale's a liar. We focus on inch loss. So depending on what your inch loss goals are would depend on the glycemic index of the foods you eat. You might want to just stick with low glycemic index foods if you want to see some more drastic results. If you don't have lofty goals, you could have a combination of low and medium glycemic index or impact foods. We talk a little bit more detail about those things in my classes, but these are just some easy ways to break this blood sugar insulin cycle. So let me go to the next. I'm going to give you some takeaways because just a few little things can break the blood sugar insulin cycle, which will then lead to breaking the leptin Ghrelin cycle. And you're going to start losing fat, you're going to start burning fat, and it targets belly fat. It targets fat around the middle. Tomorrow, in my little PowerPoint, I have a visual of the visceral fat that this targets, and you're going to want to see that. Anyway, so how do we break these cycles? The insulin blood sugar cycle and the Ghrelin leptin. Number one, you've got to regulate your blood sugars. You have to do that. We've got to eliminate those cravings. We've got to eliminate the giving into the cravings. We've got to eliminate the blood sugar spikes, which create the insulin response, which then creates a blood sugar crash. When we do that, we reduce body fat. And when we reduce body fat and the constant blood sugar spikes and crashes, which interfere with sleep, also, we will sleep better. Then we have a better stress response because, sleep and stress both relate to the leptin. All of these, regulating blood sugars, reducing body fat, sleeping better, reducing stress are now going to reduce the amount of leptin because the stress and the sleep aren't increasing leptin levels. And as we reduce fat, we reduce the leptin levels. So reducing stress and sleeping better prevents accumulated leptin. Reducing body fat gets rid of existing leptin. Now you are leptin sensitive. So when you eat, or when the Ghrelin is released from your stomach to tell you to eat, the leptin responds accordingly and says, okay, you've had enough, you can stop eating now. You don't overeat, you eat just what your body needs, and you have to be eating good foods. We talked about the low glycemic, high nutrient dense foods, and you nourish your body. You guys, it's honest to God, that simple. I get excited about this because I teach it, people take action on it, I help influence. When you're in my coaching programs, I will hold you accountable. I will keep reminding you. We journal, we do all sorts of things. We've got unending information, but you do see the results. So listen, here's your takeaways. And I'm telling you, go online, Google low glycemic index foods, low glycemic impact foods. List fruits, vegetables, and proteins that you love out of there. We need to eliminate high glycemic index foods. And if you need to Google that, Google it. But I'm going to tell you, it's sugar, anything sugary, sweets, bakery, starchy, carby. When I say carby, I mean bad carbs like rice and pasta and potatoes and bread. You want high fiber is good carbs. So that's why vegetables and beans and hummus and legumes and split pea soup and lentils, those are good carbs because they're high fiber, high protein. Those are low glycemic. So Google them, but there's some ideas for you right there. Focus on eating those. Get rid of the bad. So focus on eating well. Get rid of the bad. That's going to start regulating your blood sugars, and it's going to start bringing all these cycles in motion to work properly the way they're supposed to. Less insulin response means less fat storage, means less leptin, which means increased leptin sensitivity, which means ghrelin goes away when you've had enough to eat. Isn't that exciting? Do I have another slide? Yes, April 20th. I almost forget. How do I forget about this stuff? I'm so excited about breaking those cycles. I have my full body transformation program coming up. Burning Fat 24/7, 12 weeks of education where we dig deep into all these cycles. Even the ones that are coming up, dig deep for 12 weeks. We actually even go through a 1-week cleanse and detoxification for the very first week, getting all the toxins out, and breaking that sugar addiction. We kind of go through a little sugar withdrawal. I'm not going to lie. Oh my goodness. Sorry. My computer almost fell over. I'll get into more details about this maybe at the end of the week when I get into this, a little more details about this. But 12 weeks of education, well, 13 actually. 13 educational videos, coaching sessions, hand-holding, texts, emails, accountability, because that's what a coach does, right? A coach gets you to do things you wouldn't do on your own. And that's what I do. We can get those blood sugars regulated. We get you in fat burning 24/7. And it takes about 12 weeks to do it. We talk about all these cycles and we dig deep and get this stuff done for you. So at the end of the 12 weeks, you are a lean, mean, fat burning machine. You look better, you feel better, you look younger, you feel younger than you ever have. Honestly, you'll freak out. And it starts April 20th. You guys can go to Movers and Shapers with an N, just moversandshapers.com/waitlist to get on the wait list, because I am opening the cart for all my people on the wait list on Wednesday after the last session. And you're going to get first dibs on it because I'm limiting this class to 20 and you're going to get the best rates. So if you're interested in hearing about that, get on the wait list. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for our Melt Your Middle, Break the Cycles Day 2. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about the stress and your body and the cortisol and adrenal cycle. The thyroid's in there too. I'm not going to get into that in this 3-day, these 3-day cycles. We get into that in the full transformation, Burn Fat 24/7. I'd like to thank you for joining me. And I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow for day 2, stress in your body, adrenals, and cortisol. Have a great day. Actually, I'm going to unshare if I can figure this out. There we go. Now I'm going to say goodbye to you. Bye, movers and shapers. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.